How do I dispose of my used menstrual pads? I dispose them in the latrine.
Why is it important to hide my menstrual waste? Let's say like when they see your dirtiness, they will start to laugh at you, disgrace you, say bad things about you, and you feel ashamed about it.
Most households in Kisumu rely on pit latrines for their sanitation needs. For most girls and women during their periods, these latrines are the only private places to dispose of single-use menstrual pads.
Living in a one-bedroom house, the only way you can go and have some privacy is in the pit latrine.
Throwing menstrual waste into latrines creates challenges for sanitation systems, for workers, for users, and the environment. When latrines fill up, they need to be emptied. In the last decade, this work has become more demanding. Sanitation workers in Kisumu describe increasing amounts of solid waste in the latrines, especially single-use menstrual pads. This increases the time and the physical effort required to empty them.
Menstrual waste needs a lot of energy to pull them out. The physical ailments that I have, like the back, the neck, and the discomfort in my thigh area, are things that I started experiencing after beginning this work.
Emptying latrines requires direct contact with human waste, and therefore carries a strong social stigma. Workers use shovels, buckets, and basic tools, and in some cases, their hands.
I really wish to have the personal protective equipment, but I don't have the ability since our income is very little. We have to consider the needs of our families first.
For female sanitation workers, the stigma is magnified because menstrual blood is seen as dirty.
Men will just keep saying that women are filling up latrines with pads. I'm stressed because I'm a woman. I've healed, I've seen my blood.
Menstrual pads are mostly made of plastic, designed to absorb and retain liquid. This makes them heavier to remove once they enter a latrine. We tested the materials of different pads sold in Kenya in a chemical lab and found bleaching chemicals, phthalates, and higher levels of volatile compounds compared to similar products in the European Union. These substances pose risks to both human health and the environment. Single-use menstrual pads do not decompose. They must be separated before their final disposal. In Kisumu, workers have to do this manually because the sanitation infrastructure is not designed to handle plastic waste. Once separated, the pads are piled up and burned in the open air. This is not a sustainable way to manage menstrual waste, but for now, it's the only option sanitation workers have. Managing menstrual waste is not a sustainability challenge only in Kenya, however. Demand for single-use menstrual pads is growing rapidly worldwide, especially in low- and middle-income countries that rely on pit latrines for their sanitation needs. In India, for example, use of such pads have grown exponentially since 2010. And when these pads become more available, affordable, and accessible around the world, menstrual waste volumes will surge. The African region will face the heaviest burden of this menstrual waste load in the future, because their population is expected to grow the most. Addressing this forgotten sustainability challenge requires more than technical fixes. It requires an integrative approach that handles the problem's hidden nature across policies, infrastructure, products, sanitation services, and society. For sanitation workers, it entails safer, more dignified working conditions, better pay, affordable personal protective equipment, and infrastructure support. For users, it involves appropriate design and availability of disposal systems to eliminate latrine dumping. Overall, these measures depend on the education and coordination of stakeholders and the proper implementation and enforcement of policies. Without that support and acknowledgement, the embodied sacrifices and risks that sanitation heroes take to make cities livable and safe for billions of people around the world will remain invisible and taboo.
Jatelo tich neni chako kapoditin tinga mariek itiyo matek tinga mang'won ikonyo jo Kenya ikela Usido kum kora chako kan gimora wero rais Jatelo tich neni chako kapoditin tinga mariek itiyo matek tinga mang'won ikonyo jo Kenya